Welcome back to the Sports Show. Time to turn our attention to athletics, mate. Of course, the big races started last Sunday.
Yep.
So we thought we'd get a couple of the big names in. Colin Rowston's in to join us, mate. Of course, the Pres of Athletics, and Tomas Semmler, the current holder of the Bay Sheffield, mate, have been good enough to give us a bit of time. Won last year, mate, and a win again this year too, I don't mind telling you. Hey, thanks for coming in, boys. Maybe we start with you, Colin. I know you want to get on to the athletics first, mate, but we probably should talk a little bit about your career prior to becoming the Pres, mate. And you're still involved with the umpiring down there. How's life with the umpires, mate?
Yeah, like umpiring's a passion of mine, and I guess that's how I got into athletics. I was told I should do the athletics to keep fit for umpiring, and I wasn't much of an athlete, but I loved the athletics over summer, got me fit. And then footy took me to places which I never really dreamed of. I had a pretty decent career at SANFL level and then managed 3 years at AFL, and been fortunate since to take on a role looking after the umpires at Adelaide Footy League. So big part of my life, love it with a passion, and as I said, the athletics works in nicely with it.
First of all, Colin, thanks for 1999, mate. That was, you were one of the main reasons we had a win. Not really, but that was your last. That was your first.
My very first SANFL grand final, yeah, it was a ripper. I was actually brought up a Sturt supporter, so I didn't have much love for Port Adelaide growing up. But then I realised soon into my career as a football umpire that Sturt supporters gave me as hard a time as anyone, so I really lost any sort of allegiance to any club, and you always admired Port for what they could do. They were a powerhouse in the SANFL back then, and to do that grand final where it was tied with a couple of minutes to go.
Great game.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
It was a great game, but you had an AFL career as well, not only the SANFL. That must have been exciting for you.
It was fantastic. It took me to everywhere in Australia, umpiring at MCG, Gabba, SCG, up in Darwin and Alice Springs and over in Perth. It was an amazing experience. I lasted only 3 years. It got delisted after a fairly short period of time, but to do 33 games and experience all that was fantastic. I just wish I could have bounced the ball a bit straighter. That would have helped.
Oh, mate, you're not on your own there.
Just a quick one there. You get delisted as an umpire. That's an interesting one, isn't it? Well, did they say, listen, mate, your last game was a shocker. We're going to delist you, or is it just bang, you're gone?
It wasn't just based on the last game. It was essentially you're constantly reviewed. You're reviewed for every game and every performance, and they let you know where you sit along the way. As I said, bouncing was a big issue for mine. I think mentally too, just coping with the pressure of elite sport. I wish I'd been a little bit mentally stronger when I got to that level. It exposes every little weakness at elite level.
And we don't think about that.
But to umpire the likes of Rashido and Hurd and Buckley and all those guys back then, I mean, I look back and while I would have liked it to have gone longer, just the experience itself was fantastic and not something I never ever regret putting my heart and soul into.
We'll move on to the athletics, but just quickly, mate, when you talk about those names, what was the best piece of advice a player ever gave you?
Rashido gave me a good old serve one day. It was funny, early in the game, he said, you're the worst umpire in the league, after I paid a decision against him, and I said something back to him, something like, surely I'm not the worst or something. And then late in the game, it was Richmond and Crows at Footy Park, and it was tight, and I went to bounce the ball. We used to bounce the ball all around the ground and no recalls, and it was just an absolute stinker bounce. It bounced sideways, went straight to David Roden, who grabbed the ball and then kicked it straight down to Matty Richmond for a shot at goal, and Rashido came up to me afterwards and said, "See what I mean?" It made me feel very small. I still helped Mark Rashido get the Brownlow medal. I did give him a few votes the year he won it, so he didn't hold it against him.
Hey, doing the Adelaide Footy League umpires, how are you finding that? Because you bring a wealth of experience into that, and you touched on it then, that you wish you had been mentally tougher. You're bringing people in to help the umpires with that?
I love it. The Adelaide Footy League's a really strong league. We've got a lot of really good umpires that have continued their career after SANFL level. Richard Williams, who's well known for his efforts in SANFL and AFL footy, he's still umpiring with us with his son. We've built the ranks up, not just through what I've done, but just through a combination of factors. We've probably tripled our numbers of field umpires in the last 5 or 6 years. It's a great competition. I love it with a passion. Still get out there and run around myself. I've got 4 sons and 3 of them are umpiring, so
excellent.
It's as I said, big part of my life.
All right, let's talk to you, Tomas. Now, mate, clearly you can run. You're not thinking about umpiring, are you?
No. I wouldn't know the slightest thing about football, unfortunately.
No, probably the best way to be. Hey, let's talk a little bit about last year, mate. You win the Bay Chef. That moment where you break the tape, you've won. Athletes are all different in the emotions straight after. What was it like for you?
Man, the whole thing really was just a whole blur. Like for me, 10 minutes felt like 30 seconds. And you kind of find yourself in that like fight or flight kind of zone.
Yep.
But man, it was, really surreal. All my mates, my coach, all there, and just got to celebrate with them. It was great.
So, mate, we started on Sunday, track's back, running's back, you were in on Sunday. The problem with winning, mate, is that they handicap you pretty heavily.
Yeah.
How have you found the handicapping?
It's definitely been a learning experience, being off. So I ran the 70,
Yep.
and I had 1.5.
That's a fair way back.
Yeah,
Yep.
definitely. It's something I'm not used to just yet. Still managed to make the final, which was great. Didn't expect to, but it's definitely something I'm going to have to get used to.
There was a little bit of how do you do, if my memory serves me correctly here, about a particular runner and the handicap system. Have I opened up a little
you're on the money.
here?
You're on the money. I'll jump in and so the runner-up to Tomas was Tom Slanders, and last year they implemented a new system which was designed to penalise inconsistent running, and Tom got. Not this Tom. Tom Slanders got disqualified from the race, and he was fairly aggrieved about that. Ended up taking it to the Supreme Court.
That means you're fairly aggrieved, doesn't it?
Yeah, which was a big thing for everyone concerned. So when I came on as president this year, we decided we wanted to try and shortcut that, and we ended up mediating and fortunately finalised that. We put Tom Slanders back into the race. A long story behind it all, but he ended up getting placed back into the race, and we all move on now. It's another part of the race's folklore, because it's a long and proud race with lots of stories.
But this was over an inconsistency, wasn't it, of form leading up to the Bay Chef?
Yeah, so look, the sport in itself has tried to deal with the issues of inconsistent performance for a lot of years in different ways, and it's all about trying to penalise someone that runs dead or hides their handicap. The new system that comes in doesn't mean if you get penalised for it that you are cheating, whereas in the past they've just gone to try and penalise the cheating. It's just put a standard saying if you improved by this amount, there's going to be a penalty. So there's no insinuation that Tom Slanders cheated by any means, just that he improved a bit too much on the day of the Bay Sheffield for it to be eligible to be in the place where he ended.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, Thomas, I'm interested when you say you've got to get used to it, mate. What is it that you've got to get used to? The distance of the handicap, or just seeing everybody in front of you?
Yeah,
the mindset to go through that?
For example, on the weekend, it's kind of like hard to get yourself involved in the race when everyone's out in front and they're already starting a race themselves. You kind of got to get yourself into it. So in the heat, I managed to do that really, really well. I got myself into the race, came second in my heat. But in the final, with a few of the faster guys, I kind of just found myself I couldn't get involved. But just completely a learning experience, and I'll get better as it goes.
All right, leading up to the Bay Sheffield this year, mate, it's at Glenelg Oval. How's your form looking?
I don't want to give away too much. Nah,
it's okay, you won't get handicapped, mate. You'll be all right.
Yeah, Colin right here. So the more I go out and race the pro meets, the more of my handicap that I'll be given back.
Yeah.
And me and my coach, the plan is to hopefully come Bay Sheffield again. We'll have around 5 metres, 475. And if we can get that, then we're on again.
And we're not at Collie Reserve, which is, mate, we're at Glenelg Oval now. I believe this ties in with the Bay's 100th year. Is that the footy club? The footy club starts their celebrations for 100 years in the game.
That's a nice coincidence. Essentially, with COVID restrictions, meant that running at Collie Reserve, as much as we all love it at Collie Reserve, it was going to be hard. So we had to find an alternative venue, and Glenelg Oval, or ACH Group Stadium, was already approved by SA Health to hold footy there.
Okay.
So we approached them. They were happy to run there, and it does fit in nicely with Glenelg Footy Club's 100th anniversary next year. So historical with the 134th running of the Bay Sheffield. We have not missed a year in that 134 years, so we don't want to miss it this year. And then that combination with Glenelg's 100th works in nicely.
Hey, just quickly before we wrap up, how many races before the Bay Chef for you, mate? How many do you reckon you'll run before Bay Chef?
Oh, it's a good question. I think maybe 4 or 5 more, I think.
Okay. Yep.
I'm not too exactly sure. I haven't checked out the full calendar just yet, but it'll be a mixture of the pro meets and then the amateur meets as well, all tied in.
All right, boys, really appreciate you coming in.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
we'll get you back in. We want to talk a bit more about those races leading up to the Bay Sheffield with you, Thomas. Stay with us. Still more to come on the show.